From nail-biting backdoors to one of the craziest drafts you'll ever see, to betting on a risky strategy in Game 5 of MSI Finals, these are 10 World League's craziest off-meta picks that actually worked in professional matches, starting first with who else but the greatest Western player of all time and off-meta enthusiast, G2 Caps. Out of Caps' wide range of off-meta picks, we'll be focusing on one of his more recent experiments, his unexpected selection of AP Zac Mid, building Zaunt's secret weapon not with tank items but rather as a high-damage AP threat. You see, during the first week of LEC's 2023 winter split, G2's recently reassembled roster was coming off of back-to-back wins against XL and Fnatic, and was looking to knock off a struggling Astralis lineup to seal a 3-0 debut to kick off the year. But doing so with the normal draft would of course be too boring, so even though this Zac pick initially appeared as if it was going to be placed in the top lane, it was only when the draft was locked in without Caps and Broken Blade having traded champions that fans and casters realized that the Caps solo queue lab had been cooking up some new flavors to bring to their competitive matches.
On top of that, wait, no.
That's it. I really think this is just a bait, and they're like,
it may very well be a
Zac
bait.
Mid is possible.
Wait, was it last year that we were hearing about the Zac
Yeah,
Mid?
Caps
Wait,
was
did we even see it at Worlds?
I think we may have seen it at Worlds. Caps was playing it a lot around the end of last year.
Now, while this Zac pick was of course something Caps had in the works for some time, its viability in an actual on-stage match was still yet to be proven. However, with the help of Yikes Kindred and a very impressive Silas E interception, the burst damage flaw managed to pick up 2 quick kills not even 4 minutes to the game, and things only began to spiral out of control from there, as not only was the Zac pick excellent in early skirmishes due to his CC and Cell Division passive, but once Caps began to pick up a few AP items, he began to add some serious damage on top of these already strong features, leading to some surprisingly effective backline dives in addition to this comedically quick one-shot.
That's a lot of magic penetration. Let's see how much damage he can do. That's a lot of damage! Caps is going to one-shot the support, and G2 are just making fun of Astralis. They're going to go 3-0 on the weekend.
And while Caps has built his brand on his ability to flip the meta with some of Pro Play's wildest and most iconic picks, as we'll see later on, sometimes even Baby Faker himself isn't immune to being caught off guard when these types of unexpected twists come his way, even if these picks are coming from a minor region. You see, during the first day of Worlds 2017's group stage, Caps and the rest of Fnatic were looking to start off their tournament run strong against the recently crowned VCS champions Gigabyte Marines, who despite being the region's first seed were widely considered as the underdogs going into the matchup ahead, a label which their jungler Levi didn't really seem to appreciate all too much. Now, if you've watched League's international tournaments for a while now, it's likely that Levi has become a name synonymous with Gam's consistent appearances at this point. However, during this time, he was in just his first year with the team when he showed that even on the world stage, he wasn't afraid to put his team on his back and become the carry. Now, while this Nocturne pick was certainly unexpected to say the least, what made things more interesting was the way Gam played around this pick, or more specifically, the Eternal Nightmare's strong early game, as not only was Nocturne planned to be used as an early game menace against Fnatic, but even more impressively, Gam played around this pick in such a way that funneled so many resources into Levi that he became a nearly unstoppable omnipresent force across the map that, simply put, just couldn't be ignored. And by mixing in strategies such as a Tristana Lulu top lane swap, things became so imbalanced that while Fnatic's level 2 top laner Soaz was stuck at 0 CS 5 minutes into the game, Levi had already reached level 6 and had his eyes locked on an overextended Fnatic bot lane to spread his advantage even further.
Pushing forward, just punch comes in, paranoia! 5 minutes into the game! He is 2 levels higher than anyone else on his team right now. Talk about power leveling there for Levi. Welcome to World Levi. He's gonna grab another one. He might be able to take down Reckless too. He's pushing forward. That's the double for the Nocturne.
But even with this early lead, things didn't stop there, as by acting as a 1v1 menace to even the solo laners of Fnatic, Nocturne was able to weaponize his kill potential and bring up his allies behind him, proving that even on League's biggest stage, it's always important to expect the unexpected. And on the topic of minor wildcard regions, during the LCS 2015 Spring Split, North American fans were treated to a pair of unexpected pits of their own in a match between first place TSM and playoff hopefuls Gravity Gaming, a team which still had very much the possibility possibility of elimination lurking behind them headed into Week 8. But while one may imagine securing playoffs with a more tried and true draft would normally be the best way of going into this unfavorable matchup, that's not really what Gravity's Kane really seemed to have in mind when it came to his selection of a mid laner, as while TSM Dyrus opted for a less conventional pick of Dr. Mundo top lane due to Gravity's lower DPS team comp, Kane decided to one-up this surprise pick with one of his own, a champion who dealt damage and a personal favorite that when locked in left the caster speechless.
Gravity does not kill.
No, it's in the middle.
Don't say anything. Yo, of course it's in the middle. This is Keen. But I'm just stunned they let him play it.
However, while initially things seemed to be going as planned in poking out Bjergsen and Zed during the early stages of laning, both an overcommit and a Rek'Sai gank began to raise some questions surrounding the viability of this pick, as Keen's potential as a damage carry Urgot seemed to be dwindling. That is, until the Headsman's Pride managed to pick up a triple kill and stabilize his scoreline. However, even regardless of damage output or kills, one component that was especially useful about old Urgot's kit was his original ultimate hyperkinetic position reverser. Now, unlike his current Fear Beyond Death execution ultimate, Urgot would select an enemy champion who, after 1 second of suppression, would switch places with him, an excellent tool for catching out any squishy, unprotected carries. And now, having been brought back into the game with Wild Turtle's enemy Lucian acting as the primary target, despite his rough early game, not only was Keen capable of dealing some pretty decent damage with Muramana, but off the back of a pivotal Maokai route, he was able to capitalize on the mispositioning of the enemy ADC, who had walked just a step too far.
Urgot late game doing almost true damage with the transformation, and they're just gonna run into the base.
Right on a Team Solo mid, that's the position reverser. Turtle gets thrown to the back line. Two members of Team Solo mid have now been taken down 20 seconds apart as they can't defend their inhibitor.
And while losing to this unexpected pick was certainly annoying for TSM to deal with, at least it wasn't as painful as the time they lost to Dignitas in 2014, one of the most nail-biting endings in LCS history. You see, during the Game 1 draft for the NALCS quarterfinals in 2014 summer split, things initially seemed as if they were going to play out as pretty standard League of Legends, with TSM being especially happy with picking up Lee Sin and Kog'Maw. However, while things seemed to be business as usual, Dignitas Zion Spartan decided to mix things up, letting the dog out and locking in Nasus top lane. Now, Nasus is of course infamous for a stacking mechanic granted by his Siphoning Strike Q ability, which when last hitting an enemy will gain additional damage in future uses, and while this is great to have in the late game, having such an exploitable early game has led to the Curator of the Sands having a pretty low lifetime presence at the professional level. However, thankfully for Zion Spartan, he would be able to avoid this potentially rocky start, and as the game progressed, he pretty much exclusively acted as a side lane threat, maintaining a 0 KDA until his first kill of the game at just past the 35-minute mark. But even though this gameplay wasn't particularly exciting for a majority of the game, as time continued to pass and the Nasus continued to stack, he eventually would become far more powerful than just Maokai could handle alone, even single-handedly drawing pressure away from Dignitas' Baron attempt and taking down a Nexus turret in the process. And though he may have been stopped on his first backdoor attempt, with TSM grouping all 5 members mid to siege on the tier 3 turret, Zion Spartan, still with his teleport up, decided to push all of his chips into the center and look to end game 1 of this summer quarterfinals with a bang.
Dyrus gets hit up. This might be the time. Now he starts to teleport. He goes in. Dyrus is going to have to get out with the team. He leaves the Slicing Maelstrom on. Crumbs goes for the speed up on the ultimate. Dyrus be able to jump in. That's going to be locked on the inhibitor. The Amazing gets hit. Kiwi Kid's a little too far here. He's going to have to try and get himself out. Living Artillery and the rest of the shots of fire.
Zion is just killing the Nexus.
Zion Spartan can easily, single-handedly win the game by himself. 54-54 on the clock. The Nexus turret, he has minions. It's going to be on to the next.
Amazing.
Kind of amazing. He misses the shockwave, or the sonic wave, I should say. And he hits the Tempest. The cripple may slow the attack, but it's not on that anymore.
Oh my God.
He's going to be able to hit it. A few last hits.
He got it.
Oh my God, he wins the game.
Oh my God.
All by himself. The inhibitors and the Nexus turrets. Zion Spartan wins the game for Dignitas.
But Dignitas wasn't the only team to have their off-meta strategy somehow turn into a chaotic Nexus race, as this time it would be the Unicorns of Love reviving a classic champion combination in their underdog matchup against the notably favored roster of Fnatic during the second to last week of the 2015 EULCS Spring Split. You see, while normally Cassiopeia is a pretty common lock-in for solid AP scaling and as an anti-dash champion, the addition of old Yorick, a largely forgotten champion who hadn't even been picked by any pros all year, brought with him an interesting interaction to the mix that would make these two champions especially fun to watch when comboed together, and this was all thanks in part to Yorick's old ultimate, Omen of Death, which created a clone of an ally who, if the ally died and the clone lived, would temporarily revive the ally for up to 10 seconds. So when used on a hyper carry champion such as Cassiopeia, you would in theory have yourself a poison spitting, team melting raid boss who could play incredibly aggressively due to them more or less having a second health bar at their disposal, and luckily for the Unicorns, their mid laner Power of Evil was quite a good Cassiopeia player to say the least. After securing his team first blood thanks in part to the help of Hylissang, Power of Evil would manage to find a way to continue racking up more and more kills. However, despite showing the real power this combination could provide by using the Omen of Death to pick up 3 otherwise impossible kills during a mid-game teamfight, the Unicorns were still unable to find an answer to Febiven's strong LeBlanc performance, and things weren't looking good.
15 seconds before Chachi is up. Vardex getting closer. Kikis is trying to pull attention, but it's not enough. The Nexus turret is down. Hylissang's in place. He needs to have a magic stun, but he's not going to because he's in trouble. Febiven continues to focus the turret. Hylissang is down. The Nexus turret is down. They're onto the Nexus. Fnatic look like they're stunned at 33 minutes. Fnatic are taking down the Unicorns of Love. No! A few more hits. What? I cannot understand this game.
But after somehow managing to fend off Fnatic from their incredibly low Nexus not once but twice, during their turn to siege the enemy Nexus, Power of Evil and the Unicorns were finally able to remove Febiven from the equation and look to close out the game as tensions mounted and things came down to the wire.
Nexus is standing. Steelback has got Hylissang. He's critting massively onto Vardex. But Vardex and Power of Evil, they are pushing with the minions. Huni on full HP to Fisher. Will they go in? Glacial Path. We do see the shard connect, but look at the auto attacks. Power of Evil's got him. Can Power of Evil turn it around? Flash from Steelback. He can't find Vardex. Steelback is looking for Power of Evil. Unicorns have done it. Unicorns have beaten Fnatic.
Now, while this unlikely champion combination was able to be pulled off in one of the most exciting endings in League history, at least Yorick and Cassiopeia were being played in their correct roles. Something that cannot be said about this next pick on the list, which was not only a choice that was off-role, but also one that had been years in the making. Now, during the beginning of the LCK's 2022 Spring Split, Gen G were once again heralded as favorites to finish at the top of the standings, something only further back by their 2-0 smashing of some DRX roster that probably did never amounts to anything special. However, with their next opponents being the previous year's Worlds finalists in Damwon and Kia, victory in this series wouldn't come so easily, as each team managed to take a game off one another headed into the decisive Game 3, where in the draft phase, Gen G's support Lehens noticed that Damwon's bot lane had 2 champions that relied heavily on one mobility spell in addition to a Gragas, so in response he decided to pull out one of the most outlandish one-trick pocket picks in pro play history.
That is singed, and I need that to be support.
Now, for those who aren't already aware, not only was Singed picked for his immensely useful Mega Adhesive W, but Gen G's Lehens is actually a long-time Singed one-trick who's played the champion quite a considerable amount in solo queue. However, playing on the professional stage proved to be more of a challenge, as even though he was of course very knowledgeable on the champion, Lehens found himself dying probably more than he should. However, his redeeming moment would come during a crucial soul fight, where after stalking his opponents in a nearby brush looking for the perfect time to strike, the opportunity presented itself and it was time for this legendary support Singe to shine.
Watch the Singe on the left. Where is he? Where is the Singe? There he is! He roots Showmaker. He roots Showmaker. Is he gonna get the flip? He flips Showmaker! It's over! They're gonna end me.
But even though Lahen's Singe support has made a couple more appearances since this game, what about a champion that is so insanely rare in the competitive scene that when he was locked in, it was the first time that the LPL had seen him in 7 years. And the timing of this lock-in couldn't be more perfect, as with I Will Dominate casting on the LPL's English channel in the summer of 2021, headed into game 1 of a series between World Elite and JDG, JDG's jungler Kanavi brought out one of Dom's longtime favorite champions by locking in Shaco of all things, much to both the shock of casters and fans alike.
It's actually pretty interesting, and the Shaco actually coming out for Kanavi. I didn't even see that until right now. First Shaco competitive play. Where's Chase at? We gotta wake him up right now. I'm texting his phone, messaging him on Discord. I'm texting his mother. I'm just getting everyone possible to get this guy watching this game right now.
Now, much like the aforementioned Nasus pick by Zion Spartan, Shaco too is a champion who finds much success in the disorganized chaos of solo queue, due to his kit primarily revolving around sneaking behind opponents or luring them into his dangerously deceiving mind games. And fittingly enough, things started with a chaotic 5v fight level 1 in the topside river, in which Kanavi managed to pick up his team's second kill, coming off the back of a spot-on thresh hook by Lamau. But despite the fight coming to an end shortly after, for the JG jungler, the Cloud Fiesta had only just begun, as with his newfound influx of gold, shortly after his initial clear, Shaco began to go on the offensive with his infamously brutal ganks picking up an additional 2 kills in the span of around 30 seconds, putting the Demon Jester even further ahead and allowing him to make significant impact in teamfights, securing the objectives for the rest of his team in the process. And as the game progressed, things got only more and more out of hand, turning what started as a professional game into essentially a glorified solo queue Shaco highlight reel.
Onto the bot lane, Kanavi's onto Breathe.
Wait, Breathe is getting 1v1 by Kanavi. That's a jungler versus a top laner. That's not meant to be how the game works, but Kanavi just annihilates Breathe.
But chaotic 5v5s weren't a deal just exclusive to the LPL, as just 2 years prior in the LEC Spring Grand Finals, Game 2 of this best of 5 series between Origin and G2 truly showcased the ever iconic European flexibility for both teams on the region's biggest stage. After G2 managed to secure victory in a hard-fought Game 1, thanks in part to the infamous bot lane duo of Sona Tarek, entering into Game 2, Origin swiped the double support strategy for themselves in what seemed to be a pretty straightforward selection of picks, that is until Nuke Duck struck first with some sword-wielding spice.
We are seeing a bit of a hover right now, but audience, you got to be careful with the hovers until they're locked in. Oh, it gets locked in. We got a Yasuo in the final.
But not to be outdone, G2 rounded out their response with their legendary Pike Flex, and while this adaptation was notable, it still wasn't the end of tricks that the regular season champions had up their sleeve.
We have the Pike in this. Wait, that's a smite on Perks. I think they might be doing a funnel, ladies and gentlemen.
With Caps pulling out his classic solo queue pocket pick alongside Yankos and Perks returning to their old funneling days of 2018, the G2 off-meta train barreled forward full speed ahead, starting off strong with Perks' all-important Xayah securing first blood, followed by a double support roam by Caps and Mickey in the top lane to both kill Alfari and crash Wonder's wave. And while Nuke Duck's unanticipated Yasuo managed to secure a quick kill onto Mickey, it was no match for a fully funneled Xayah, who kill after kill absolutely ran through Origin what ended up being the fastest finals game in European League history. But while it's one thing to unleash outlandish strategies while leading the series headed into Game 2 of a regional finals, to do so while already down entering Game 2 of Worlds finals would be absolutely insane. But during Worlds 2020, that's exactly what Suiting's jungler Style of Me, or SOFM, had in mind.
And I think the GP Ultimate is really effective at making that much harder. Rengar!
What?
Let's go!
Finals?
Now, not only is Evelynn versus Rengar an absurd matchup when considering the history of their largely non-existent presence in the jungle in pro play, while one would normally expect both champions to act as one-shotting machines for their respective teams, SOFM's pride-stalking wildcard continued to bring surprises, as instead of going for a more conventional damaging build, he instead opted for a first item Knight's Vow, as this tank Rengar simply took over, securing Herald, shadowing his solo laners, and of course still doing what Rengar does best. And and though the game still remained up for grabs on both sides, SOFM's Rengar came in absolutely clutch for Suning, as off the back of narrowly securing Cloud Soul and transitioning this newfound lead into Baron, the LPL 3rd seed marched down mid to even out the scoreline, and before Damwood could find any hope in a potential Elder flip, despite it being in SOFM's name, it ended up being Bin's Fiora who's the one that styled on the Korean champions in the end, securing the first and still only pentakill ever in Worlds Finals even to this day.
Bin sends him
Penta.
Goes, gets caught out, that's the Quadra, looking for it, Bin will pick it up, get the pentakill for Bin, and Suning Gaming in the World Championship Final!
Now, while an off-meta lock-in during Game 2 of an international finals is practically unthinkable, especially by today's standards, during Game 5 of MSI 2015 in this now legendary series between the Titans of SKT and EDG, the Chinese champions attempted to pull off one of the greatest baits in the game's professional history. Entering into this series, Fakers LeBlanc had never lost a game in his competitive career, being an astonishing 12-0 on the champion with such dominance leading to frequent bans to prevent this menace from taking over games. So while you may imagine EDG would follow suit in preemptively stopping the seemingly inevitable, shockingly during the final game of MSI's Grand Finals, the Chinese powerhouse left the champion open, and out of both comfort and confidence, Faker locked in the mirror image mage. However, despite this seeming to have been a big mistake by EDG, unbeknownst to the unkillable Demon King, he had just allowed SKT's draft to play right into their opposition's hand perfectly, as spearheaded by an abnormal selection of Morgana mid, EDG's draft revealed its true form and essentially being designed entirely to counter Faker's LeBlanc pick from numerous angles, leaving SKT's primary carry unable to optimally play to his champion's strengths. And while the Korean champions fought valiantly against their cutthroat counterparts of EDG, ultimately as the game progressed, this counter composition came into full effect, shutting down SKT, ruining Faker's undefeated record, and securing the Chinese Titans their first international trophy. If you enjoyed this video and would consider helping me out with a free subscription, that would be greatly appreciated, or you don't have to either, that's okay too, but very happy to be back on the channel. And with that being said, hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later!